Hello there everybody, Scotia here, and welcome to another chapter review for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, the JoJoLands. So I said at the end of the previous chapter review for chapter 6 that I was going to, experiment with something new. I was going to try a different format for these reviews. I was going to leave it until the next volume and then basically, do these chapter reviews like 4 at a time, like per volume. So I was going to wait until volume 2 and then, do one longer video covering, chapters, I think 5, 6, 7 and 8. Or, kind of mostly 7 and 8 because I've already done 5 and 6. But yeah, so basically that was my idea. Then I was going to do that for subsequent volumes. So like, I'm still doing the reviews, but there's a bit of a longer gap between them. But then the videos to make up for that would be longer. So that was my plan. But I still wanted your guys' input on that. I wanted to know what you wanted, because as much as, I do these videos because I want to do them, I'm also doing them for you guys, for the people that still watch these, which I do appreciate, by the way. I just want to mention that. So yeah, I put up a poll on my community tab on my channel, basically asking people how they wanted me to keep doing these reviews. Did you want me to stop entirely? Did you want me to keep doing them as I've been doing? Or did you want to, me try the volume format out? And, I put up that poll shortly after I did the Chapter 6 review, and, I had every intention of leaving it until, the next volume and doing it that way. But, overwhelmingly, the option to just keep doing these chapter reviews as I've been doing them, like every month, for each chapter individually, that won overwhelmingly. So, clearly you guys keep liking this, that you like this format, so I'm going to keep doing it. So yeah, back by popular demand, I guess. I'm going to keep doing these reviews monthly until, we get to a point where I feel like, is it worth trying something new now? But we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I think a goal for me has always been to, get to about 12 chapters, so do about a year of these reviews, and then, once we get to a year, I'll assess there and see if it's worth doing, or if I just want to, if I want to keep going, or just stop. But chapter 6 was the halfway point towards that. Obviously 6 months, or now 7 months into the JoJoLands Part 9, and I just kind of wanted to give an idea of hey, how are people feeling so far? So that's what that was all about. But you guys answered, which I is great, and I have no problem doing these monthly. So yeah, that's it really. That's the intro out of the way. So without further ado, let's get into the next chapter, which is chapter 7, and I think this one is titled Jungle Warfare Part 2. So let's just get into it. So we pretty much start things off with this chapter, pretty much right where chapter 6 left off, where, Jodio is hanging upside down, he's bleeding from the head after hitting his head, Dragona is heavily wounded, Paco is freaking out and trying to, help Dragona out, and the cats are still circling around the group, and, it's in a very bad spot. Usagi has currently, by the looks of things, just straight up left them and abandoned them, but we'll get to him in a minute. And yeah, just really not a good situation. Obviously the cats are surrounding them and they're using the string to destroy all the plants and just their environment around them as they get closer and closer. And Paco is basically just freaking out. He just desperately wants to get away from all of this. Dragona is bleeding heavily. Paco's trying to help Dragona out. And then you have Jodio, who's trying to, get his bearings, I guess, and, while also using November Rain to protect himself and the others. Because there's a part here where Paco tries to, drag himself and Dragona, out of reach towards a tree, and Jodio, screams at him, Paco, don't go, don't move from underneath my range and all that. Things then get from bad to worse, really, because while Paco uses the hustle to, drag himself and Dragona up a tree, which I think was really cool, by the way. I will say very briefly about the hustle. I definitely think it not having a physical form, it's not a bad thing, but it's kind of a shame, because I really like to associate, stands visually. I definitely think stands that don't have a striking, well, not so much striking, sorry, just don't have a really visual design in general, I think kind of makes them a bit forgettable to me. Just me personally, I'm not saying that as an objective non-visual stands suck or anything like that. No, I don't think that at all. It's just I kind of tend to forget them more often, and I definitely think that's the case with Paco and the hustle, because I really like this stand, but I almost always forget it exists until Paco uses it. And I will admit, when he uses it in really cool ways, and this here, and earlier in the previous chapter with Rohan, he uses it in a really cool way, and I'm oh man, this stand is sick. But then when he's not using it, I'm oh yeah, I completely forget about it. So it's just a brief observation I just wanted to make there. But yeah, so Paco uses the hustle to climb himself up a tree while holding onto Dragona in order to get to Jodio to cut him down. But unfortunately, the cats have already kind of guessed their second move, or as is explained later by Jodio, the cats are able to actually, distinguish or determine the range of each, person's stand, which is really impressive. I don't think we've ever really had maybe, I mean, not off the top of my head, I can't think of one specifically, but like where the user like knows straight away, like, oh, this stand has this range. Like normally you would have like some idea, but like obviously they would know with Jodio probably, because Jodio has already used November Rain by this point, but like I don't think Dragona has used Smooth Operators, and obviously Paco's using the Hustle right now. But yeah, the cats basically know the range like of each person's stand, and they know, you know, basically the range they have to be in order to get around it, which is very impressive. And it's just this really weird thing with these cats. Like, I've been kind of not against them, but it's just kind of like, oh, you know, like cat stand users, that's quirky. But like, no, like this chapter especially is like, man, these are lethal. Like these guys are lethal. Like these cats are just insanely like strong, and they work really well together. And of course it's only JoJo where I can say something like that and it makes sense. But yeah, we basically then finally get the reveal of where these strings that have been, you know, just decimating this group for the last couple of chapters, we finally see where they've been coming from. And it was funny because I think when they first like started kind of like alluding to like, oh, the string comes from the cats, I thought it was like something dumb, like the cats like shit the string out or something stupid like that. But no, basically the string is actually from their fur, which I think is really cool. I think that's a very cool visual touch here, and it almost makes the cats look alien, like when all the fur and the string start like spreading out and like flapping in the air around the cats, like in these pages here that you're looking at now. Really striking and very cool visually, like just really like, oh man, like, because it's so like, we've had cats before, not like in this way obviously, but like we've seen a cat in part 4. Obviously we had Stray Cat and their stand and all that, but yeah, just a very interesting way of like, okay, here's a cat again sort of used in a stand encounter, but just visually it's just completely different, stands out way more. Just really cool stuff. It's really cool that Araki is able to, you know, still at this point use concepts that he's kind of sort of used before, but just completely, you know, redo them in a way that just feels so unique and special. Like, you know, I think it's honestly one of the main reasons why JoJo has had the longevity that it has, especially, you know, in regards to just how long, like, I mean, still to this point, like, stands are still going on like 30 years later, probably more than that by now. Like, just how, you know, and I think that's such an impressive way, and I think it really points out the strength of the concept that, you know, Araki came up with in terms of like, oh, here's a stand, and like stands can just do anything, and like the users as a result can just do anything. And like still all these years later, like part 9, like since part 3, like now we're on part 9, like all these parts later, and it's still like impressive how he uses this concept of stands in such interesting ways, not just with the stands but with the users. Like, I don't, yeah, very weird tangent, I know, but just like, it's just, this chapter really made me think like, man, like still all this time later, like Araki is just so good at just taking the same concepts but just doing them in a way that is just so impressive that you just can't help but like kind of gush about it like I am right now. So the three cats basically just launch an all-out offensive at the same time on Dragona, Paco, and Jodio. And honestly, you know, maybe again, I on the spot, I can't really think of anything like off the top of my head, but this is honestly like one of the most gruesome and like violent panels I think I've ever seen in JoJo, where the string like wraps so tightly around Paco's face that his eye actually starts popping out, and it's just like, man, it just really caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, like I don't know, maybe it's just been so long since I've seen, because I think off the top of my head, especially recently, and I mean recently in terms of parts, not chapters, because this was probably like 5, 6, 7 years ago probably, but I think one of the few times I think I've seen something like this was, I think maybe in part 8 when Josefumi beats up the Apex twins in the flashback. When like, and yeah, that was brutal as well. Like, obviously they're rock humans, so like there's bits of rock flying, so that kind of like takes away from it. But like, yeah, that was brutal, and like this was just crazy. Like, it completely caught me off guard, and like I was just impressed by like just that level of just sudden like, oh, you know, like Paco's getting fucked up right now. It just really sold it well. Really gruesome. And I think, you know, I'm not like that one, I'm like, oh yeah, like I love violence and gruesome stuff like that. Like, I know on this channel I cover Mortal Kombat and stuff like that, but that's never been a big like part of why I like that series or stuff like that. But I think when it's used effectively, like it is here, I think it's good, because it sells like the damage being done to them. It's like, oh, you know, because we've had string stuff before, obviously like Rai in part 8, you know, he had Doggy Style that had a similar, not similar, but had, you know, a kind of string type effect to it that wasn't used in this way. But yeah, just really sells it well. I think very good use of just extreme sudden violence and kind of gore. Yeah, I think it was very well done basically. So as a result of all this tightening string around them, Dragona and Paco, they flat out just pass out. Like, they, all the strings around their throat and tightening around it, and they're just, they're out. And meanwhile, Jodio, he's trying his best to get out of the situation. He's swinging back and forth, and we actually get our first real kind of like dub against these cats, because Jodio manages to use November Rain to take one of them out. It was kind of sudden. Like, I was almost kind of like, oh, like, it's down, but it's not out. But no, like, that's straight up, like, this is the first of the 3 cats that is just defeated. Like, this cat gets absolutely, hit dead on by November Rain, and it's out. And obviously this infuriates the cats. And we get probably my, like, favourite panel in this chapter, probably, because with one cat basically, like, out of commission, the string that cat had created starts to like fall off, and obviously that loosens up over Dragona and Paco, and they kind of like, oh, they can breathe, and like left. It's kind of funny because obviously it's like one string that's only gone, like, from one cat, but like suddenly they're fine again. Like Paco and Dragona are up and they're talking, and like Paco's eye is fine. But that's just kind of like a small nitpick, I guess. Yeah, basically now that they've realised that, one of the 3 of them is down, and that, they've lost one of their strings, the 2 cats left absolutely freak out. And this kind of like plays into what I was talking about earlier with, like, visually, these cats are just so unique and so interesting, and just Araki doing something again with cats, but just in a completely different way. And this panel, like I said here, my favourite one of the chapter, really emphasises that, because the cats go ballistic and the string just goes haywire and all over the place and starts knitting together to create a net. And the visual of it just looks so crazy looking. Like, this is like probably one of the craziest looking things I think we've seen, in terms, not so much like things as in, like, obviously like November Rain and the stuff it's done has been pretty crazy, but like I just think, like, striking visual wise, like, this is definitely like one of the best things kind of he's drawn so far, I guess, in this part. Obviously, low bar, it is chapter 7. We've got many more chapters ahead where I'm sure he's going to, draw things that are twice or 10 times as amazing and crazy as this. But I think for now, this is definitely one of the most, like, striking shots he's done so far in part 9. But yeah, definitely my favourite page or panel of the chapter. But yeah, so the cats are freaking out, they're going haywire, and then basically the cats kind of get their revenge because they basically trap Jodio, Dragona and Paco in one giant, like, string net together. And yeah, and that's the point where it's like, yeah, things are looking pretty bad for the 3 of them. They are absolutely, like, to be honest, no real ifs, ands or buts about it. Like, they've been defeated at this point. There's no way they can get out of this. They're all of them heavily wounded, just disorientated, don't know left from right, up from down. They're just, all of them are completely, out of it. And the cats pretty much have their victory almost assured at this point, because Jodio, like, it's starting, like, the string is starting to dig into Jodio now, and Dragona is, freaking out because, now Jodio is at risk of dying at this point. And then, like a bolt of lightning out of the blue, what a surprise, Usagi is back. Now, I said in the previous chapter review, like, I didn't believe for a second that Usagi was betraying the group. I was really surprised at how many people kind of did believe that. Like, it was very surprising. I felt like it was way too early, way too on the nose, like, given how, like, especially in the chapter before, when Rohan, like, straight up tells Jodio at the end, like, oh, like, someone in your group is probably going to betray you, like, you should keep an eye out on that. And then the next chapter, Usagi, oh, I'm suddenly looking like I'm abandoning you guys. Of course he was going to come back. It was way too early. Araki is too good of a writer to do something that on the nose. Crazy that people even believed for a second. Like, obviously I'm not saying, like, many people did. Like, the vast majority kind of, saw that this was kind of a red herring meant to throw people off. But it was just weird how many people I saw in general, like, at all, think that this was, actually the case, that, Usagi was betraying them. Very weird, but anyway, yeah. To no one's surprise, I guess, Usagi's back. He drives the car that he stole previously in the last chapter. He drives it back and he crashes it into the tree, which kind of sends things shaking, kind of loosens them up all a bit, and the string goes loose a bit. And basically the cats go flying, and the cats flying leads to the string, finally snapping, and everyone's free, basically. And Usagi gets out, and he has this little cute, like, kind of peek over the car door where he's like, hey, I'm back. And honestly, for a second, there's this panel with Paco here where it's like, I honestly kind of had to, like, do a double take. I'm like, is he like crying? Because Paco's like in shock, like, oh wow, like, you actually came back, like, I can't believe that. I don't know, it kind of, I don't know if it's just me, but like, it kind of looks like Paco's crying here. Like, I don't know, like, I definitely can see maybe a bromance forming between Paco and Usagi after this, maybe. Like, obviously Usagi's gonna get shit, because it's like, you dickhead, you left us. Like, obviously you came back, but like, you still left us when we needed you. Obviously it still works in their favour, as I'm about to cover, but yeah, I don't know, it'd be very nice if this is the one where, like, Paco or the whole group rather, you know, not just Paco but Dragona and Jodio as well. It'd be nice if this is kind of the thing that goes like, okay, Usagi, like, yeah, you're not as bad as we thought, you know, you've got some, you know, you got some brains, you've got some bravery, you've got some loyalty, we respect that, you know, we'll maybe treat you a bit nicer. I think that'd be good if this is the moment where Usagi kind of, like, this is his moment that kind of, like, solidifies his placement in the group. I think that'd be really, really cool. And then from here, we get probably one of the most drawn out, like, JoJo ass pull explanations, where the character just basically looks at the reader and goes, hey, I'm about to explain, like, everything that, like, you're confused about, or as I'm just basically going to explain everything I'm about to do. And, you know, it's a typical thing at this point, like, not just in JoJo, but just in anime and, like, manga in general. But yeah, this is one of the longest. I feel like this felt like, when I read it, this felt like it went on forever. But basically, Usagi just goes on this really, really long explanation, basically explaining what he's going to do, like, kind of sort of as he's doing it. I'm going to wrap it up, because honestly I don't really have the time to go through this whole thing bit by bit, because it's so long. But basically, what he did was, when he left, there was burgers left in the car. I guess I don't remember them buying burgers, but, you know, maybe I just missed that. It has been a few months since, you know, they got to the villa. I guess that chapter, I think like chapter 3 was that, so that was definitely, you know, quite a long time ago now. But yeah, so basically Usagi, like, took some, like, burgers that had been left by the gang when they first, you know, left the airport to go to the villa, and he also got caviar. He stole caviar from Rohan's fridge and basically put caviar in the burger meat, and then fed the burger meat with the caviar in it to the cats. And obviously we've seen quite often now that, like, this lava rock attracts things, there's this thing about it, and I think Usagi kind of, like, cracks it here, where he realizes that, like, things of wealth are attracted to the rock, which is why the diamond and I think the lava rock was so kind of, like, connected or drawn to each other or something like that. But basically, long story short, Usagi has used this, like, burger caviar fusion to feed to these cats, so that they are also drawn to the lava rock, because the cats themselves are now valuable. So it's like the valuable, you know, because they've got caviar in their stomachs because they ate like $400 caviar. So, like, they're expensive now, they're valuable. I don't know, as JoJo ass pulls go, this one is definitely, like, out there for me. Like, I can believe it and I've accepted it. It's like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense, I guess. But man, like, I think the combo of it, kind of, in terms of just, you know, being out there as an idea in general, combined with, like, how long Usagi went on about it for, yeah, not my favourite kind of, like, sudden twist of, like, oh, I did this and this whole thing. Like, it was cool, and obviously it works because the cats start rolling around, and basically Usagi uses the Mate Kudasai to trap them. I will say, I'll quickly interject here, I wasn't kind of sure on the Mate Kudasai at first, but I really like it now, because I'm really liking this trend of Usagi, like, basically because he can't tell the stand what to do, the stand has to be told what somebody else wants. So, like, Usagi can't be like, oh, make me socks. He has to get someone else to ask for socks, and then he gets socks. Like, it's so stupidly convoluted and, like, it's just dumb that I kind of love it, and I love it here, where Usagi's like, hey Dragona, like, it'd be awesome if you just asked for a net that we could just, you know, coincidentally use to trap these two cats. Like, it'd be really cool if you just asked for it right now, like, right this second. I really would like it if you know, that kind of thing. I don't know, I just think it's funny. Like, it's dumb, but, like, it's JoJo dumb, where, like, it's kind of, I guess, I don't know, it's smart, but it's just funny to me, and I think it could lead to some, it'll lead to some good, like, comedic moments. But I think it'll be really cool when, like, the gang are on the same page, and I think, like, it'd be really cool during, like, the climax of a fight, where, like, Dragona or Paco or Jodio, like, know exactly, like, oh, I need to use the Mate Kudasai here, and they just, like, become so entwined and on the ball, like, as a group, that they just know straight away, okay, I need to use the Mate Kudasai here for this. I definitely think it will get to that point where something cool will happen with that. But for now, I just really like this kind of comedy bit where, like, Usagi's just kind of like, yeah, it'd be really cool if you could ask for this really specific item, you know, because I can't ask for it. So that was really cool. And yeah, basically, Usagi, you know, finally uses it. He uses the Mate Kudasai after Dragona asks for a net, and yeah, the cat's defeated. Obviously, we could still, you know, have to see what happens next month in the next chapter. This, you know, this could be a red herring of sorts. The cats could break out. I kind of doubt it, because I feel like at this point we've kind of had it. Like, I don't know, I feel like if the cats broke out and we kept going back to this now, it would kind of be a bit redundant, a bit repetitive, because, like, we've already done it, and technically we've already beaten them, so for them to kind of be like, oh, surprise, we're back again. But yeah, the cats are seemingly defeated, and, like, I'm also, like, you know, I've just said that. I'm also kind of surprised because it feels like this is only like I said, like this is Jungle Warfare Part 2. Like Part 1 was kind of the start of that fight. Obviously the crew and the cats kind of had a clash earlier when they were in Rohan's mansion, but like, you know, that was still during like Rohan's kind of arc. But yeah, like I'm really surprised we've supposedly or seemingly, you know, already done with this stand fight, like just really out of the blue. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, like it's weird, like it's a shame that like we don't even know the name of this stand. We don't know if the cats have a name. Like obviously, you know, the cats are the cats, but like even the rats in part 4, like they had names like Bug Eaten and Not Bug Eaten and stuff like that. And like, yeah, just really weird. Like it's not a bad thing, but like the pacing so far in this has just been so like lightning, like breakneck speed, that like it's been good, because I definitely feel like one of the biggest criticisms, at least I had about part 8, and I know other people had, is like the pacing sometimes in part 8 was really bad, and like some things just felt like they went on forever. And this has been the complete opposite. Like I can't believe in chapter 7 we've been introduced to everybody, we've seen a ton of stands, we've met Rohan for some reason, we've had a fight with Rohan, we've found the major MacGuffin that's going to carry probably the most or the majority of this plot for the rest of the part, and we've already had our first major stand battle and defeated them in 7 chapters. Like in 7 chapters of JoJolian, you know, I'm actually going to look now, you're going to hear a lot of typing, but I'm going to look now, JoJolian chapter 7, because I want to know what JoJolian was on at this point. So chapter 7 of JoJolian was Josuke go to the Higashikata family. So this was, let me just check. Oh, okay, so this is basically the chapter where Josuke like first meets the Higashikata family and like is introduced to him for the first time. So obviously at this point, part 8 had had its first major fight as well, like the soft and wet arc where I think Josuke fought Ojiro and Fun. Yeah, so like obviously that was a major fight, but at the same time that was like the majority of like JoJolian by that point. You know, we had like obviously the first chapter where we were introduced to everyone, and the second chapter kind of like leading up to it. And then I think like chapters 2 or 3 to 6, I think, like that's the fun fight where, you know, Josuke's in the apartment and like the girls in the bath and stuff like that. Like that's the majority of like the first kind of like the first few like chapters of part 8. And you know, in part 9, like we've already done so much. I don't know, like I said, it's not a bad thing, but I'm also kind of just like, I'm just surprised, like the pace is just so snappy. But like, it's like I said, it's not been a bad thing, because it's not gotten to the point where I'm being like, oh, it's too quick, like we need to slow down a bit. Like, because I kind of feel like maybe the next chapter onwards, or maybe like chapter 9 or so, then we might start slowing down a bit and we kind of get more kind of character talking and less action. Because that's the thing, we've had these chapters and like these things like Rohan, the diamond, the lava rock, the cats, the string, the forest, the jungle, Usagi leaving. Like, this is all things that have happened very quickly in these last few chapters. But like, there's just been a ton of stuff going on. Like, there's tons of action going on. The chapters as well are pretty long. Like, I don't think any chapter's been like less than, I want to say like 30 chapters. Pages. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but like these have all been like pretty meaty chapters as well, with lots of action going on and lots of stuff and dialogue and people talking and doing things and actions and fights and stuff like that. So it's like, it's not dragged or anything, it's not, you know, felt long, or it's not gone quick. Like, the pace has been quick, but what's happening in them is still kind of like meaty, I guess. I don't know, hopefully I'm like making sense of that. I'm probably not, but you know. But yeah, and that's pretty much it for the chapter. Like, obviously Usagi's got the cats in the net with the Mate Kudasai, and Dragona and Paco are kind of like talking and like looking over the cats. And then Jodio has his final kind of like thoughts as he thinks about Rohan and what Rohan told him before he left about, like, you know, don't tell anybody about the rock, like don't even trust the group you're with, because I wouldn't. And then Jodio has his kind of final thoughts here where he's like, you know, Rohan, you were saying all this, and that's fine, and I understand that, and I agree with that, but like, you've been watched this entire time, because there's no way any of this makes sense with you like not having been watched. Like, somebody knew about this probably before we did. Like, somebody knew about you, they knew about that lava rock ages ago. And it's that thing of like, you know, there's definitely the tease, I guess, of like there's powerful things in play here. There's people involved in what's going on that is just above even Rohan, possibly, that he's not even aware of. And, you know, I think that's a very good cliffhanger, but that's basically, you know, the end of it. It's the kind of closing thoughts here. And yeah, that's chapter 7 done. So I'll kind of briefly go into my wrap-up thoughts. So chapter 7 of the JoJoLands is done, and seemingly so are the cats, which, like I said before, is very surprising. Like, the pace of things, I'm not prepared for, honestly. I was really so used to how JoJolian did things, which is kind of, like I said, not all of it, but like some of it was very drawn out, went on for a while, things maybe went on a bit longer than they needed to. Like, fights and arcs had like multiple chapters, in multiple parts. Like I think one of the infamous ones is like, I think the final arc in part 8, not the final one, but the final major one with Toru, The Wonder of You. Sorry, I don't know why that took me so long to think of that one. Yeah, so the Wonder of You arc in part 8, like solely just that one arc in part 8, is like longer than the entirety of part 1. Like, just really crazy stuff. Like, things went on for just a really long time, for better or worse. And yeah, things here, like I said, just so many things we've done. We've been introduced to everybody, we've had some crazy stands introduced, we've met Rohan, we fought Rohan, we beat Rohan, we've got, the lava rock, the diamond, and then we fought cats, we ran through the jungle, Usagi left, Usagi came back, in like 7 chapters, and like I said, part 8 at this point, 7 chapters, like we were just meeting the Higashikata family. Just really surprising stuff, like I'm just not used to it, and in some ways I feel like it's a direct kind of response from Araki from the criticisms that part 8 had in terms of the pacing of stuff kind of going on for a long time. I feel like this is Araki just being like, okay, yeah, I'll speed up the pace. Maybe I'm wrong on that, maybe, this is just naturally how he wanted things to go, but yeah, just potentially next chapter we could be out of this villa and like out of this jungle, and we could be back on the mainland, back where Jodio and the others like we were in the first 2 chapters, which to be honest I'm kind of excited for. Like, obviously this stuff with the villa and Rohan has been, interesting and it's great, and the stuff that we've learnt from this arc and meeting Rohan and all that stuff, like obviously will be invaluable going forward for the rest of the part, but I am kind of looking forward also at the same time of getting out of this jungle, getting off this island, going back to the mainland, and just seeing what's next, like meeting the next kind of, not so much Stan user that we're going to fight against, but just see what happens next, who's going to get involved next, where's the story going to go, which is great and is exactly what should be doing. Like this is the feelings and this should be the thoughts I should be having at this point. So yeah, just great stuff all around. Like I said before in the other videos, really enjoying this part. I definitely think so far, like compared to where we were, like I said, obviously comparing it to JoJolian, like I'm just so much more interested in this part and these characters way more than I was for JoJolian. And I don't hate JoJolian, I like a lot of those characters in there, I like a lot of the arcs and the story overall. Definitely some missed points and some low points, in that, especially towards the end. But like, I don't hate part 8. But so far, I just think part 9 has just been doing such a better job in just keeping my interest and keeping me engaged in what's going on. So yeah, all around, just really hyped, really can't wait to see more. Love Jodio, I'm honestly really liking Jodio a lot. He's, I'm not ready to rank him in terms of, JoJo protagonists yet. But he's up there, man. He's definitely in the upper half at this point. Such a really cool character. Easily my favourite in the part, so far. So yeah, just great stuff all around. I'm going to stop rambling for now. I'll leave it here for now. I shall see you all next month for the next chapter review. And yeah, goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.